Okay, we've broken this up a little bit differently. And John 4:45 to 5:17. Actually, we start at 4:43, but it's really ostensibly how his healing ministry begins. And you know, it never fails that between the time I studied it last and the time I studied it now, I see something different in it. And I hope I can bring that out to you. So ostensibly, this is about his healing ministry, but it's broken up into two places. First one is encouraging faith. That's the first healing. And then the second one is all about, do you really want to get well? And this applies to you and I. Okay. So where were we last week? Okay. Anybody, I just put this up. Jesus has left Judea, was headed to Galilee to escape the controversy about baptism. Who got more, John versus Jesus? Really doesn't matter. He chose to go through Samaria. We talked a lot about that, why that was a controversial decision and why it was important. He got a great group of converts as he came through there. It's one of his first converts. He stops at Jacob's Well near Mount Gerizim, which is the mount where they shouted the blessings from, and near Mount Abel, which is where the other guy shouted the curses from, if you'll remember that from our study of the Old Testament. Okay. Jesus sits down with a Samaritan woman. He tells her so much about herself. He realizes she must be a prophet. She runs down into the city and grabs a bunch of Samaritan people and brings them back. And he spent, I think, 2 days there. Was it 2 days? And there were a lot of converts. So a lot of people came to believe as a result of that meeting by the well. You know, a lot of people think that story is about the woman and her behavior. It's really not. It's how one woman changes and brings change to others through Jesus. Okay. Where are we going this week? Okay, John 43 to 45. And let's go ahead and read that. Just somebody want to read 43 to 45?
After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, where they also had been there.
Okay. Okay, thank you. He perceiving, and this is a pretty common thing. I was thinking about having no honor in Nazareth. He departed to Galilee. A lot of times people who are not known in their own hometown or the home area go somewhere and they achieve something. And then when they go back to their hometown, all of a sudden, wow, you guys, you know, you're a prophet, you're a celebrity, you know, whatever, but they have to go somewhere else and do it. So Jesus wisely realized, hey, these people have known me since I was a kid. I'm going to have to go somewhere else. So they understand that I am who I am, and he's going to show them to that. I kind of thought of an example is Pierce Vanderslice. You know, there's people in this church who cleaned his diapers and changed his diapers and probably put up with his stuff, you know, just like, you know, he was probably just like I was when he was a kid. He was full of
Vim and vigor.
vim and vigor. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
There's
So,
another way to put it.
but he probably drove some people crazy. But when he came back here, all of a sudden they're like, man, he is a good preacher. Man, he is a good pastor. You know, but he had to leave for a while, go somewhere else and come back. Yeah, who would have thought? You know, I'm sure there are some of my high school teachers who would go like, you're a deacon?
You?
Man, how desperate is that church, you know? So, I hope to meet them, some of them at my 50th,
Class reunion.
reunion, yeah,
Oh,
here this
boy.
year. So we'll see, okay. And he was welcomed there because he had done things at Passover. If somebody wants to read John 2:13, we're kind of going backwards, but that'll give you an idea of 2:13 through 25.
13 through 25.
Uh-huh.
When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." His disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then responded to him, what sign can show us? What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this? Jesus answered them, destroy this temple and I will raise it again in 3 days. They replied, it has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you're going to raise it in 3 days? But the temple he had spoken of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said. Then they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken. Now, while he was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs he was performing and believed in his name. But Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He did not need any testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person.
Okay. So he made he made an attention grabbing display of righteous anger. That was the first thing, but he also did signs and wonders, which they didn't, really elaborate on here in 23 and 24. But he did make a splash there. So, and I have a part of it right there, the 2:23. So that's where we're going this week. Okay, John 4:46 through 48. Somebody want to read that?
When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe.
Okay, yeah, and that sounds kind of harsh, but we'll tell you. So anyway, Jesus is returning to Cana, where he got some people's attention by turning water into wine at the wedding, if you'll remember. He was demonstrating his mastery over creation and nature. We'll talk about that here again in a second. And a nobleman, it's important that we understand this is a nobleman. We don't know what class, we know he was in a noble class. We don't know what his rank or position was. Rides all the way from Capernaum, all the way to Cana to implore Jesus to come back to Capernaum to heal his sick son. That's kind of an interesting thing. Why did he ride 20 miles, which is a pretty good ride back then? And he probably rode pretty fast because he's worried about his son. And just to give you an idea, you can see where Cana is down there, kind of in the middle of the country, south, just across from the bottom tip of Lake Tiberias. Is that what it is? Yeah. And then Capernaum is all the way up on the northern end of that lake. Okay. And you can see some other things there, like Mount Hermon, which is from the Greek or from the Hebrew meaning take a left. And so just to get you familiar of it. So it was a pretty good ride.
sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Isn't that,
Yeah, prove me wrong.
that land, isn't that really mountainous through there?
I believe it
too?
is, yeah.
So he would have to kind of zigzag and get there. Right?
Yeah, I think when they were looking across, they were looking at mountain ranges before they came into the country. So, but it was even 20 miles of flat land would have been a hard ride on a horse to get there quickly. So just to give you an idea, it's not a short ride. But he exhibited the faith that Jesus could do something from what he had heard by riding that distance. And you can see all the way he was probably going like, am I going to be too late? Is my kid going to die while I'm on the road to see Jesus? I'm sure he was going through all the things that parents go through whenever their kids are sick. So, okay. Like I said, the first part is about encouraging faith. We see it as a healing miracle, but there's a little bit deeper story here. And you see there, the second picture I got there, he's dressed as a Roman soldier or official. We don't know if he was a soldier or just a nobleman or what, but just to give you an idea that the commentaries have different thoughts about that. Okay, Jesus' response in verse 48 seems a little bit harsh until we go back to the original language. And let me see, where is 48? I can find it here. Okay. Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will no means believe. Well, that sounds kind of condescending. Yeah, who are these people? As Jerry Seinfeld would say, or Seinfeld would say. Well, when you read it back in the original languages, you realize he's referring to a group of people. He's referring to all the noble class. This man would have been one of Herod's people. He would have been a king's man, an employee of the king. So they belong to a certain class. So he's referring to that class of people. You guys are so spoiled. You guys, you have everything you need. You don't really need faith. But unless you see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe. He's speaking in the plural. That makes it a little bit more palatable. Okay, it would have been an official of Herod's retinue, a governing class of Galilee, a king's man, and here's Jesus speaking to him like that. That's pretty impressive. He's pretty bold. Okay. He's telling the entire class of people they won't believe unless they see signs and wonders. Okay. And, you're probably wondering what that sign is. I have a function on this in PowerPoint. It's a designer, and it'll take your slides and change them for you and give you about 6 or 8 different choices. This has got nothing to do with the Middle East. This is just one of my favorite places on earth. This is, anybody here seen
It's like Lord of the Rings.
no, it's a story about William Wallace with Mel Braveheart. You've all seen the story of Braveheart or read the book or read about. This is the monument in Stirling, Scotland to William Wallace. Okay, built in the 19th century. And it's really neat because you can walk up and you see William Wallace's sword. He was an exceptionally big man, and it's a huge sword. And then you can have fun trying to go down the spiral staircase and not tumble head over heel. Okay, but it sits on a hill behind Stirling Castle, so you can see it from Stirling Castle and so on and so forth. But that's what that is. I just thought it was beautiful. So,
But we digress.
So anyway, that's okay. Now, in the next couple of sentences, Jesus is going to answer the nobleman and he's going to deny the nobleman. Okay. Okay, faith versus sight, verses 46 to 49. And somebody want to read that? No?
I think that's what we just
Oh, did
read.
we just-
read that.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Didn't read.
Well, Didn't read 49. The nobleman said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Some of the translations is my little boy or something like that. So you can see he's heart sick. Okay. Okay, the father believes, or he wouldn't have ridden 20 miles to Cana to see Jesus. But he believes that this guy is probably a miracle worker or a magician or something like that. He doesn't have the faith that he needs. This is going to be an opportunity to have deeper faith. Okay. The father believes, but it's a low level of belief. He believes Jesus must actually touch the child in order to heal him. Go, your son lives.
Yeah.
Simple. The guy's going like, what? No, you got to come over to Capernaum and touch him. You know, I need you to do that. And then the other translation says, go your way, your son lives. And this will be repeated to him when he gets home. Jesus has given the nobleman a chance to have a higher level of belief. He's getting to see what Jesus, not for what he does, but for who he is.
And
Okay.
the guy, there was a, call it a profession at that time of magicians and healers and all of that,
Mhm.
who would go and perform fake healings.
Yeah.
And then some of the people would get better.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that the context this guy was working out of was, I heard this guy's a healer.
Yeah.
Let's see if he can come do this, which is why he was figuring you have to be physically there because that's what he's experienced in the past.
Yeah, and there was a lot of commentary about you have to go to the physical place like Lourdes, or there's one in Mexico City that heals the lame. And supposedly there's just hundreds of thousands of crutches that people have gone down there and be healed. But the whole thing is you got to go down and pray to a statue, or you got to go down and get healing waters. Or the priest has to touch you or something like that. Okay, so that's what this guy was thinking for what Steve was saying. He's thinking he's a healer. Even today, I haven't seen too many of these on TV, but they used to have like Benny Hinn and who else was up there that used to do healing? Swaggart?
Well,
Thank you.
that's a guy in Oklahoma. Oral Roberts.
Oral Roberts.
Oh, he.
Okay. But it's funny that all those guys are very dramatic and they have to have props and places and everything. And Jesus just says, go, your son lives. And that requires faith. That's the real healing tool. Okay. So a little bit different than just an ordinary healing story. Okay. And then I got reminded of two things. First of all, later on, we're going to see in John, it says, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. What preceded that comment?
In looking at
Thomas says, Yeah,
Unless
I won't
touch
believe
it.
until I put my fingers in the scars and the holes in his hand. And a little bit later, here comes Jesus says, I heard what you said. So I hear everything, by the way. And then, the other thing that kept going through my head as it was a Converse thought, and and you guys can sing it with me if you want. Oh Lord, haste the day when my face shall be sight. What a wonderful line, okay? But that's the Converse side of this, someday we won't need faith anymore. All our faith we will see in real life. Okay, and this is just a work stoppage. And as you can see, I had on here, we'll be back shortly, and I tried to put in the music from Jeopardy, the thinking music, so we can sit here for a few seconds. You can see BB the bulldozer comes up and he doesn't have a place to sit, so he just knocks the keyboard out of the way.
Kevin, did that create a catastrophe?
Oh, yeah, almost. So anyway, these are my working breaks. I get to sit there peacefully and wait until he's done looking around the room and looking at stuff on the desk and everything. So
He is a little chunky, isn't he?
Yeah.
he's, you think he looks like he's all muscle.
Yeah.
There's not an ounce of fat on it. And Michael can attest to that. He's just a big boy. He runs up to my little 7.5 pound girl when he's feeling his oats, and he'll just run up and jump across her, and she comes up, her back comes up to right about here on his belt.
He just
And-
stands over.
Yeah, and stands over, and of course, she's named after Margaret Thatcher. She call her Maggie. And so she's got a personality that I'm not taking this,
We are in this place.
Yeah. So anyway, faith versus sight, verses 50 through 53. Okay.
Go, Jesus told him, your son will live. The man believed what Jesus said to him and departed. While he was still going down, his servants met him, saying that his boy was alive. He asked them what time he got better. Yesterday at 1 PM, the fever left him, they answered. The father realized this was the very hour at which Jesus had told him, your son will live. So he himself believed along with his household. Now, this was also the second sign Jesus performed after he came from Judah to Galilee.
Thank you. Yeah, and you notice when they meet him, they use the same words that Jesus used, your son lives. So there's a connection there. Okay, that no one believes the word Jesus has spoken and begins his journey back to Capernaum, but all the way back that 20 miles on a horse riding through the dust and everything like that, he's going, oh, maybe I should have stuck around. Maybe I should have stayed another few minutes and tried to really convince him to come back to Capernaum. And it was just killing him the whole way back as a father. Did I do the right thing? Okay, so this is where his faith gets fortified. Okay, his servants meet him on his return and tell him, your son is getting better, your son lives. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, he did heal him. And then he add comparing notes. They compare notes, and the father realizes his son was healed at the exact time he believed what Jesus told him, that his son lives at the 7th hour. I think that's fascinating. He can compare notes. I think God always makes it possible in these cases to really go, this wasn't just a coincidence. The guy didn't just get better on his own. It happened when Jesus said it, and it was documented. Okay. Verse 53, as a result, both he and his family believed. Okay, so there's 2 more converts. And as being a nobleman, he probably had a lot of people here, and he could tell this story. So he probably got a lot more converts. Okay, and verse 54, which we just read, this again is the second sign Jesus did when he came out of Judea into Galilee. Kind of sounds like a cast off or a throwaway, doesn't it? I mean, just think, is this a transition sentence? Well, when you get to looking at it, you think, okay, it's not really when you look at it, because the 2 miracles are signs. Remember, we talked about signs are telling us something about Jesus we didn't know previously. Okay. The water into wine indicated Jesus' complete mastery over nature. That's the first of the 2 signs. And then the second healing showed complete mastery over illness, way beyond the abilities of man. Okay. A doctor, no matter how good a doctor they could find in the entire world in that time, he couldn't help this kid. It was purely God and Jesus that healed this kid.
And I think a sign in that context, a sign is not a sign unless it's tied to prophecy.
Mhm,
And I think that's, so when they talk about a sign,
mhm,
it is a fulfillment of prophecy.
yeah.
And I think that's why they're using that terminology,
Mhm,
is because it is directly connected. It isn't just a miracle,
mhm.
it's a sign.
Yeah. That's a good point. It isn't just something that's nifty or, you know, a parlor trick. It's a sign that this guy is who he says he is. Okay. And then in synopsizing this first healing, I could have used 6 slides, or I could have just kind of cut down what I read in one of the commentaries. Actually, this comes from 2 different commentaries. And I just read it here. It says, that is what Jesus has come to do. This is the real meaning of this healing, the first healing, to bestow faith and to make it grow. He didn't just heal the guy. He gave the nobleman a chance to increase his faith and to understand, I'm somebody special. I'm God here on earth. You know, I'm who I say I am. Okay, the story tells us we're in the hands of one who does not always answer our prayers in the way we expect, but in doing so, he lifts us to a higher awareness of who he is, of his authority and power in the world and in life. Our faith as a result becomes stronger, cleaner, and truer. We are enabled to exercise it at a far higher level. Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith. How many times have you prayed for something and you wanted to answer it some way specifically? And all of a sudden you get down the road and you go, my prayer was answered. You know,
Now, sometimes it's a direct and sometimes it's
yeah, it's indirect,
indirect.
but it's sometimes not at all the way you think it should have been answered, but it was answered. And it probably was answered in a way that is complimentary to you, you know, that it came out well for you.
Do you
Okay.
ever have times when you're not even looking for something and something happens?
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
Because that's what's been happening to me. last couple
Yeah.
weeks. It's just, I don't expect anything. I'm not looking for Jesus or looking for God to do something,
mhm,
and he does.
yeah.
And it's very clear that it's
Yeah.
him.
Well, you know, it's funny, this week I was working on the widows ministry, and we got 20 ladies that needed help. And at the beginning of this, I'm tearing my hair out wondering where we're gonna get help. Fortunately, Wayne and Michael came in and helped me this week on a couple of critical ones. And Nancy helped me on, how many we said we did, 8 or 10?
I think we've done 8 so far.
Yeah, 8 so far.
Mm.
And this morning, AJ Irby, I was telling him I got 1 more to go, but I'm going in for an ablation on Thursday. I might, hey, just send me the stuff. We'll, me and my daughter's boyfriend will go over and take care of it. Okay, so. And I just, all this week, things have been moving around. People, ladies are going, I can't do it this day. I need to do it this day. And they go, man, Lord, you are just taking care of me. You're making all this possible. And right now we've got maybe 1.5 projects left. So it's I see it all the time, and I don't even ask. I mean, I pray over it initially, but then I go, okay, let's get to work. And God takes care of it. And all week it's been like that. Oh, man.
Makes you want to
Thank
look
you.
up and say, I saw what you did.
Yeah. I gotta admit, I don't always do a full blown prayer, but I always like, yeah, I can give them thumbs up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Right.
so yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Sometimes God knows what we need when we don't know we need it ourselves.
Yeah, and it's funny to me. Well, in my case, and sorry for taking up your.
No,
time,
no,
but Yeah, in my case, it wasn't just me seeing it, it was my sister and
Yeah.
the lady that I'm working with, we're all noticing like this, there's no way this would have happened without,
Mhm,
you know,
yeah.
and.
So I forget, is your sister a believer?
Yes,
Okay, is lady working with you a believer?
yes,
Okay,
yeah,
so, yeah, it's interesting. Well, it's okay to see it. That confirms her faith. It builds her faith.
Yeah.
Nancy had a conversation with a lady at CVS. This,
It was wild.
yeah.
It was just a wild conversation about, it was like, I said, isn't it a nice day outside? And she goes, yep. She goes, and I thank God today, after that solar eclipse, she goes, it hit me so much that I thank God every day for the day I get to get up
Mhm.
and be with him. And then we got off into a whole tangent about rapture and the coming, you know, it's like, how did this happen? But God.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw, we were out, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, and it got real dark. And I thought, man, when this happened when Jesus was crucified, that had to have a powerful impact on people. And it's, I think the Christians, the eclipse has a different meaning. So anyway, one thing that I found in one of the commentaries, Tom Landry when he was alive, was on the board of Dallas Theological Seminary. And so, and he's a good Christian man. I think we all knew that, but he had a great quote. He said, "The job of a coach is to make men do what they don't want to do in order to achieve what they really want." And I wish the coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins had known that last night, but he did not. Okay.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Oh, that is a personal problem, and we had a problem a lot last night. That is what Jesus does. He puts us through circumstances we don't want to go through. He makes us face things we do not like to face in order to achieve what we have wanted with our hearts all along. To do so requires the strengthening of faith. Every time he puts us through these things we don't want to go through, it strengthens our faith. Okay. So that's not just a simple healing. That is an increase of faith. It's taken the nobleman's level of faith to a higher level. And so does that give you a little bit different perspective on that first healing? Hopefully. Yes, no? Okay. I'll take that as a. Okay, the second healing, the real question here is, do you want to be healed? How many people do we know that don't want to be healed? They kind of wallow in their helplessness. They kind of wallow in, they won't fix their own problems. Linda's back there smiling because she knows one of my situations I deal with. As a matter of fact, I unloaded to Wayne and Michael about two people whose situations I've been involved with here in the church for 10 to 15 years and no change. And it's just frustrating. And just like, I'm telling you what to do. I'm willing to help, but you got to help yourselves. There's a lot of people who do not want to help themselves. And that's kind of what you see. This guy was the only guy at the pool that day that wanted to be healed. Okay. There were probably hundreds of people of that, and I'll show you some pictures of it. But it continues, this chapter 5 continues to talk about the healings of Jesus' ministry, and we'll talk about that. It's easy to take it at face value and just marvel at it. But this story represents an actual dramatic turn in the book of John, okay? It's where people have started to notice, oh, you did something on the Sabbath that you weren't supposed to do. Oh, okay, well, why? Well, the guy that healed me told me, oh, who was the guy that healed you? That started the persecution of Jesus. Okay, so you see, you may not even notice it. We wonder why they break the chapters where they do. We talked when they wrote this thing, they didn't have breaks or chapters in the book, and they didn't do that till the 15th century, I think we decided. But they broke it here because there's two different subjects here. They're both healings, but they're two different subjects. Okay, what you see there is Bethesda, the pool of Bethesda today. And why I've read about the archaeological findings of it. And it's pretty interesting. It is a site that's very confusing to look at. It's very confusing for archaeologists to interpret. It took them, after they discovered it, it took them almost 100 years to interpret what the pool was and what it looked like. And you'll see that here in a minute. But you can see all these buildings sticking up off of what should be a flat surface for a swimming pool. They came in and built churches and chapels and everything on the site of the pool of Bethesda. And so these are the ruins of old churches. Okay. Somebody want to read John 5:1-4?
Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years.
Okay.
That way too far.
Yeah, no, that brings up something very interesting. Okay. Why is 4 not in your Bible?
I saw in mine either.
Okay.
It's in the footnotes.
It's in the footnotes, yeah. We'll see, and I'll show you an example of it. Why do you think that they didn't want that somebody would take that out of the Bible or put it in a footnote?
That's probably why I have all that circled in my Bible.
Yeah.
3 and 5 circled.
Yeah. Well, they didn't want to attribute the healing power of Bethesda to the supernatural, to an angel. And they wanted the healing power to be attributed to Jesus Christ, Well, we'll show you how they did that. Couple
Okay.
things as we go through, yeah,
And,
yes.
you know, I said a couple of weeks ago, I found this Legacy Standard Bible that
Mhm,
went back to the original, and it actually has verse 4.
mhm.
It says, "For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after stirring up the water, stepped in, was made well from whatever sickness with which he was afflicted."
Okay, yeah, mine has it too. Mine's a New King James Version. What I'm gonna show you here in a minute is the Bible Gateway version of a New King James, and it doesn't have it in there. It moves it to a footnote. So even in the same versions, sometimes they move it out and
They still have it in there, but.
but it's in there,
But
but
you
they,
see, this morning when he was preaching, he was using a different, but. What was it,
CSB.
Christian Standard.
another one to remember.
I looked it up last night.
I'm tired when I go through commentaries and scrolling down the, 46 acronyms or whatever.
Probably relates better to.
Okay, a couple of things that as we go through here, I want you to just to notice, there was a feast of the Jews and the Jews went up to Jerusalem, probably Passover, undoubtedly Passover. Now there is in Jerusalem, the sheep gate, a pool, which is one we're talking about, Bethesda. The sheep gate is now called St. Stephen's Gate. So just if, for those of you who've been there or are going there, when you see St. Stephen's Gate, that's the sheep gate. Okay. Okay. And these lay a great multitude of sick people. Oh, Bethesda has 5 porches. That's key too, because scientists didn't believe that until they found this, the one they found now. Okay. And then, of course, the other thing, they came in during this festival and they went to this pool for healing. Okay, this is a very common thing for the Jewish people to do. Okay, and then the rumor was angel went down and stirred it up, and if you were the first one into the pool when the angel stirred it up, you got healed. And that's the basis for the conversation that Jesus will have for this man. The truth is that Bethesda, like a lot of springs in Jerusalem, are spring fed. There's air pockets and they stop and they start and they gurgle, and has nothing to do with an angel. It's just, it's nature, which God has control over, but for some reason, people are believing this. Okay. Okay, John 5:1-4, a couple of points here. The Bethesda pool. There's tradition to gather here in hopes of healing miracles. The site was first discovered in the 19th century, identified tentatively around 1967. Okay, but it took a total of about 100 years for archaeologists to identify and interpret site, and you could see why. And we'll see another picture. It's a jumble of additional chapels and religious sites and churches, which, being a history buff and being a collector of stuff, I hate it when people mess with stuff,
He runs more movies by, do you see that? That's. I don't care.
Okay.
I just want to enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's more of shut up. Has anybody here ever seen the Bethesda pool in real life? Anybody, have you been to Jerusalem or seen that?
Yes, we were in Jerusalem, but I don't recall seeing.
Okay. Okay, I think it's been uncovered gradually. I go off into these little sidebars. I've got about 6 or 8 archaeological magazines that I search and everything. And this is a very difficult site to interpret, and I think they've only recently gone, yeah, this is it. So anyway, interesting thing I want you to remember here. The Siloam pool, which is mentioned further on in John, where the blind man is healed, has been identified as a mikvah. That's a Jewish ritual cleansing bath that they would have gone through. Okay. The Bethesda pool, where the lame man was healed, which is the miracle we're talking about now, is also considered a mikvah, but it has an interesting difference, and you'll see what that is here in just a second. Huh? Okay, the rectangular pool, there goes my spell check. The rectangular pool with the additional pool gives the site 5 porticos, and you'll see, I thought, how do you have 5 porticos on a square pool? So it must be a 5-sided. Well, until 1967 and until now, archaeologists thought this is just a literary reference. You can't have a pool with 5 sides. We've never seen that in those times. They thought, no, maybe they're referring to the 5 books of the Torah. This is the representative of the 5 books of the Torah. Well, they were kind of surprised when they finally got this thing tore apart and looked at. Sheep Gate in John's account is now called St. Stephen's Gate, just in case you ever get over there. Okay, Many Christian Bible versions do not have a verse 4 or as a foot or only as a footnote. And I'm going to show you an example in the next slide. Why do you think that is? We've kind of talked about that. They didn't want to attribute it falsely. Okay, probably not to confuse believers that the healing waters was superstition and not of God. Okay, now this is I just scanned this out of the Bible Gateway version. Okay, this is an example of missing verse 4, New King James Version, and you can see there it says. Now there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades, porticos. Okay, 3. In these days lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. 5. Wait a minute, where's 4? Okay, there is no 4. One man who had been there was invalid for 38 years. Go down to the footnotes and it says some manuscripts insert wholly or in part, waiting for the moving of the water, for an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred the water. Whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was healed of whatever disease he had. This is the fun of going line by line and reading the commentaries as you go. It's just fun to find these things. I never knew this, you know, so it's kind of interesting. Anyway, this is Bethesda today. Did you see anything like that over there? Or did you see a lot of stuff like that?
We saw a lot.
Yeah. That's a swimming pool, but it's been rebuilt over and over and over, and they've had to kind of they have some amazing tools in archaeology now. They can take pictures and then form up 3D versions of them and then take buildings out and move them down. And I don't think they could have done this back in 1945 or 1930 or even 1955. You know, without the computers, they couldn't have found out where this place was and really deconstructed it, as it were, without destroying it. This is what Bethesda would have looked like. And this is an artist concept, but I also think there may be a model of a Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem over there somewhere. And they have this thing put in there so you can see it. And this is actually looking at it from 2 different sides. You see there's an upper and a lower pool. And that, you know, they're just seen from 2 different sides. And if you look at them closely, you'll notice there's a difference in the conception of the windows on the side and everything. But what was really neat about this is the bottom part, the lower part, is the mikvah. The upper part is a reservoir that feeds the mikvah, and it cleanses, goes through this middle wall here and goes down into the mikvah, where you can go and ritually cleanse. And you can see it's up by the Shepherd's Gate or St. Stephen's Gate near the northern wall. And I have a map in here somewhere, but you can see now all of a sudden we got 1, 2, 3. Well, you can't see me pointing there. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the upper, and 1 continuous one on the bottom. 5 porticos or colonnades. So the people who are saying this can't happen are now proven wrong. Archaeologists have found this.
What was it built for?
Built to be original, a ritual cleansing bath for the Jews.
Okay.
Yeah, before they went into, I'm sure, into the temple. Now, this lower one, it doesn't show it in here, but this lower one would have had a long sloping steps going down into it so you could walk down into it. The upper one probably didn't have any steps because it was just a reservoir. It wasn't considered a ritual cleansing up there. Okay. So do you guys like this kind of stuff? I like to see what it looked like. I get curious, like, what did this look like? Is it still there? Do they know where it was? That's kind of questions that go through my mind.
Well, I'm curious too, how deep is it?
Let's look at
Was
that.
I mean, I've seen pictures in my Bible that's like, it looks like it's 20 feet down.
Well, if you look at the little doors on the portico,
Yeah,
I think let's say they're 8 feet. They're 8 feet tall, just guessing. That would put that thing at probably somewhere between 16 and 24 feet deep.
and
Yeah.
then somebody that's sick is gonna get in.
Yeah, they would walk, this doesn't show it, but there would have been sloping steps going down there, made of stone. So you could just walk down in it.
Yeah, but I mean, 20 feet deep.
Well,
Probably wouldn't go all the way to the bottom.
you know, what's funny is when he healed this man, he didn't even have to touch the water. Why'd they make it so deep? Okay. I guess if you're a Jewish guy and you've been exceptionally sinful that year, you might want to take a good bath in there. Or go for a 20-mile swim or something like that, or a mile swim. Okay,
They must have been good swimmers back.
yeah. Okay, and this just gives you an idea how, there's the Temple Mount,
Oh,
okay? It's outside the wall. And it's toward the northern portion. It goes out the northern side. I'm not sure what the Pool of Israel is, But if you go an equal distance south of the Temple Mount, that's where the pool of Siloam is, where the other miracle took place, which we'll talk about later. Okay, and you can see the crucifixion is there and the eastern wall of the Temple Mount. Gives you an idea. Okay, and I mentioned the Siloam pool only because there's a point here. We're gonna talk about the Siloam pool later. But it was rediscovered in 2005. They never knew where it was, and all of a sudden they found it, and you can see it has the sloping steps going down into it. Okay, but this is where the other miracle of healing the blind man happened, but there is a connection between the two pools. And this is an artist's conception of what it would have looked like where Jesus cured the blind man, which is not what we're talking about today, but it's a much different pool than the Bethesda pool. Okay, now we'll go on here. John 5, 5 through 9. Somebody could read that.
One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked.
And there's a lot of meaning in each of those lines in
The
here.
day on which this took place was a Sabbath.
Sabbath, yeah, which is going to get him in trouble.
Mhm.
Well, not really. He's Jesus. He's not really in trouble, but he wants to be. Okay. If he's in trouble, he wants it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Bring it on.
yeah, okay. The man has been ill for 38 years. He's not necessarily been lying there all that time. I think that's a mental picture we all have. But he's been ill for 38 years. He hadn't walked for 38 years. Can you imagine if somebody healed you magically and you tried to stand up on legs that didn't have muscle or anything like that? That meant the healing was complete. He restored the muscle and everything else.
The thing that I keep thinking about is he kept going back to this pool, even though he never could make it.
Yeah,
Like, he didn't give up. And that's fascinating.
it shows faith. It shows faith.
Yeah.
But it's also the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing. It doesn't work, you know?
Well, wait a minute,
Yeah.
but he kept showing up and eventually it did work.
It did
Yeah,
work.
there you
For a
go.
totally
It
different
wasn't what he
reason.
thought it was gonna
That's right.
Exactly.
It
And
was
which is-
in Jesus'
Well,
time, not his.
Yeah.
It could also have been the fact that he had no other hope too.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
But he does have hope because he says, I'm getting up and I try to get into that pool, but
Yeah.
I have no one to help me. He does now.
You know, I get
Yeah.
this, I get this impression here, you know, we say he went to the pool. But if he's already there and he doesn't have anybody to help him get in the water, he's basically there.
Yeah.
I mean, his mat is there, he's there, he lives there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he may have friends that are taking him,
Mhm.
just like those 4 friends took the one
Yeah.
and lowered him down through the
Through the
roof.
roof.
Yeah.
May have friends that are taking him there.
But they leave him and say goodbye
Yeah.
after that because
Which
there's.
is
no
kind of a
help.
Yeah.
point we'll get to in a second. You know, Jesus doesn't say, hey, stay here and try it a couple more times. He doesn't say, hey, stay here and we'll bring you 2 meals every day. And he says something else. He
Get up.
tells him, get up. So, okay. Jesus probably reached out to him because he sensed his helplessness. Okay, you gotta realize, he didn't heal anyone else at the pool that day. And that's because they're all in the water trying to get healed by the water. Okay, this man, he sensed being Jesus, he knew this man was helpless. So, that's probably the reason. Okay, verse 6, that's a strange question to ask what he says. Verse 6. He said to him, do you want to be made well? Do you want to be healed? Doesn't that sound like a strange question? Of course I want to be healed. I don't lay here for my health. What? You know, but this goes.
I like how we use that. That was so-
Yeah, that just came out. I'm sorry.
I like being fair to others.
Yeah, but you know, we talked about, there's a lot of people who don't want to be healed. They like to wallow in their helplessness and they want other people to take care of them and do stuff like that. Well, this guy, he says, yeah, I want to be healed. Says, yeah, I've tried. I have no one to help me. But I have no hope. Well, he does have somebody to help him now. But Jesus saw that he tried. Every time the water bubbled up, he tried to get in because he wanted to be healed. Okay. Okay, Jesus' answer is simple and direct. He does not suggest that the man continue to do things he's been trying to do all along to try to get into the water while it is troubled. Okay, we talked about that being the definition of insanity. So what does Jesus actually say? Jesus, one, you break this down in three parts. He asks them to do the impossible. He removes the possibility of failure or relapse and expects continued success. Okay, and you think, man, that's a lot in this little sentence. So I broke it down under. He asks him to do the impossible, rise. He's been crippled for 38 years. Why? How can he rise? Guy has faith here. Removes any possibility of failure and relapse. Pick up your pallet and go. You won't be coming back here. And then he also expects continued success. Walk. Verse 9 is a confirmation he was healed for good. Okay, because it says, where is it? Okay. And immediately the man was made well, took his bed and walked. And that day was the Sabbath. Okay.
I mean, he didn't hesitate. That's
No.
the thing, like, he didn't go, I can't do that.
Yeah.
He just got up.
Yeah. And the reason is, he was sitting there, he probably had enough faith to go, I can't walk, but if this guy is telling me to rise, he's gonna do something to make it possible. He had that faith, that this guy had that power. Okay, this guy being Jesus. Okay, don't mean any disrespect. Okay. Okay. Other people continue to seek healing from the waters rather than their faith. He was the only one healed that day. Jesus could have healed everybody there, but he didn't because they didn't seek him. They didn't. Okay. What happened here is a transference of faith for the man's own efforts, from his own efforts, getting up and walking into the pool to Jesus. He transferred his faith to Jesus, that he would help him. Okay. It would be interesting to know what the man's thought just before this happened. He said, might have been thinking, if this man's asking me to do something I haven't been able to do for 38 years, he must be going to do something to make it possible. That's where the faith came in. He didn't say, oh, I can't walk. Yeah, if he's telling me to rise, maybe he's got something going on here. Okay. When the man's will was in agreement with the Lord's will, the impossible happened. Is there any lesson about faith here? I don't know. Okay, yeah, big lesson about faith.
I think
Okay.
there's also a direct, you said it, and I hadn't really thought about it that way, Kevin. You said Jesus didn't heal anybody else there that day.
Mhm.
He only healed him. Why? Because there was an authenticity
Mhm.
to the man's need and his seeking real, true healing, which
Mhm.
Jesus then used to leverage more than just a physical healing.
Mhm.
But, what's that verse? God searches the entire earth for those who are seeking him
Yeah.
and is pleased when he finds those and connects with those. So I think there's a need here. How deep is the need? How deep is the desire? Which I think is where Jesus' question comes from.
Mhm.
Do you wish to be healed?
Yeah.
Um,
And it also talked about, we'll talk about later, he'll talk about the removal of sin, that's that part. And you almost touch on some, this guy wasn't just physically healed, he was spiritually healed.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll talk about that. Did you have something you started?
I keep thinking through just the short part of John that we've seen so far. There were a series of what I like to call divine appointments. Nicodemus, the Samaritan woman, this man that needed a healing, and Jesus conveniently made himself at certain places right at the time of the story, and it makes me think Jesus knew that this was the divine appointment he had for that moment in time, and we each have divine appointments that God puts before us. Are we recognizing those divine appointments and making?
Well, that's a good point.
Mhm.
Yeah. I put this picture in here and it may be too small for you to see, but I blew it up even though it gets a bit grainy. Because I think this points out what's going on at the well. You see, Jesus is up there at the top of the stairs and he's talking to the man. Okay, the disciples are kind of looking on. from the lower right. Where is everybody else in the pool? They're down in the water. A miracle's about to happen up here, of faith up top, and they're not even gonna see it. Cause they're down in the water, trying to get healed by the water, the supernatural healing. Okay, and I just thought that was a perfect picture, because every one of them, and I'll show you some more ones. This is the blow up of that picture. You can see. See if I can keep from tripping over any cables. Jesus and the paralyzed or the lame man are up here in the top.
Okay.
Right.
The disciples are down here, or somebody's watching. Okay, and seeing what's going on. And these other people are down here in the water, thinking that's the way they're gonna get healed.
They're missing it.
They're missing it.
And isn't that a perfect picture of the Jewish leaders?
Yes.
They're all down in their ritual, they're all down in their routine, trying to find salvation, and they're missing the Savior.
And we're gonna see that when he gets accused. They're so based in their foundations of man and their legalism and everything, and their regulations, that they missed. This guy got healed. So anyway, I like that picture. Okay, so, and Jesus said to him, get up and take your bed and walk. He didn't say swim, he didn't say bathe, but every picture you see of this, the guy's sitting next to the water. Forget the water. It's Jesus that healed him. It's his faith that healed him. Okay, interestingly enough, that kind of cartoonish animated one there is from Arabs for Christ. So you can pick up some interesting stuff from different places. So, but every one you see the water represent, he's right next to the water, like he could reach down and touch it, but it has nothing to do with the water. Okay. So anyway, somebody want to read John 5:9b through 11? We kind of read 9b already, but go ahead and do it anyway.
The day on which this took place was a Sabbath, and so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The Lord forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat and walk."
They didn't even realize that, you know, they said, they just see him, and I've got it anywhere, it's in Jeremiah. You can't carry a load from your house. Well, this is a pallet, but the whole reason for he's carrying his pallet is you're not gonna need to be laying back by the pool anymore. You're healed. So it's a sign that he's not going back. Okay. But the Jews are now looking at it going like, oh, you've broken a regulation. Religious bigotry versus recognition, and recognition of Christ for who he was. Okay. And that day was the Sabbath. The Jews said, well, we've just read that, so I won't do it again. Okay. Dogmatically, they were correct. Okay, they were following the laws. There's 39 laws concerning work on the Sabbath. Jeremiah 17:22, if you want to look at it on your own, that's the one that he specifically violated. Okay, so dogmatically, yeah, they're correct. But it's just, instead of asking how he was healed and praising God for the miracle, they go after his violation of laws. Okay. He defends his action by saying the man who healed him told him to pick up his pallet, which is true. Okay, he wasn't rooting him out or anything like that. He was just telling the truth. Okay, follow up is everything. Okay,
Doesn't that mean that Jesus basically is acting as if the second covenant is already active? So
yeah.
that all of those rules are.
Well, he will say something. He will say something here that says, the Father is still at work, and I am at my work. So yeah, he's changing the rules as we go.
He's building the new covenant.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And
So-
well, he's kind of acting
He's
like it's
following
already
along.
there.
Yeah.
That
Right.
it's- Yeah.
Right.
Because he's there. And why I say that is because that happens a lot, and I think in some of these miracles where the Jews end up going after him.
Hmm.
It's already, I mean, it's technically their truth, but it's Jesus. You can't really, I mean, he's the one that made those rules,
Mhm.
and he's saying they're gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
Yeah.
acting as if they're
Well, they're made at a time for a season and for a reason.
right.
Now,
It's,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
he's God, he can change the rules,
yeah,
you know.
and he has.
Okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and read it. Follow up is everything. And then they ask him, who's the man who said to you, take up your bed and walk? But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, a multitude being in that place. And as soon as he healed him, he backed up. He didn't even get to ask him what his name was. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple. I love that phraseology. Jesus found him.
Mm.
almost brings tears to my eye. And he said to him, he knew he would be in the temple because he would have been paying Thanksgiving with his healing. See, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you. It's interesting that Jesus did find him. He knew where he would be, but I love that phraseology. Jesus found him. The new believer is in trouble, but sure enough, Jesus is right there to help bail him out of it. Okay. Okay. Notice the order of the words Jesus uses in 14. Okay. And the order of the words is, see, you have been healed, made well, sin no more, lest something worse come upon you. He didn't say, yeah, you sinned, but I made you well. He said, no, now you're healed, sin no more. That easy. You know, he's already forgiven him for the sin. So the man had been healed physically and he had been healed spiritually, to your point. Okay. This all stuff, if you just read it, you know, you'll walk past it. Okay. Okay. John 15:16, the justification of the persecution. Okay. The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus had made him well. For this reason, the Jews persecuted him and sought to kill him because he had done these things on the Sabbath. Okay. Okay. Jesus ignored them because regulations were the tradition of men. And that's written in Mark 7:8. Sorry, I got a little graphic that got in the way of the wording there. Okay, so Jesus just ignored him. You know, when it's time to pay the price and go to the cross, he'll do it because he wants to, not because he has to put up with these people. Okay. And this is to the question you asked. Okay, but Jesus answered them. My Father has been working until now, and I have been working. He's changing some of the rules. He's letting them know who he is. They're going to have salvation. Okay. So here's the takeaways from this. Find out where God is working and follow him. Okay. Look around you and find out. Is there an area of your life where you would like to be healed? I could think of several in my own. Okay. If you say yes, he's going to tell you what to do. Okay. If you're just faithful in that. He'll say something real simple. He'll tell you how to do it. Say something like, rise, take up your bed and walk. And that's your clue to do it. Okay. And that's it. I didn't think I could get that much time out of that. Thanks to you guys and your input. Worked out well. Thank you. So, questions, comments, cheers.
That same process of healing. And then Jesus finding the man at the temple happens again in chapter 9 with blindness.
Yeah.
There's a pattern that Jesus is following to show that he's going to be with you, walk with you even after that salvation.
Yeah. I forgot to put this in here. But the reason I showed you the Siloam pool and the Bethesda pool is both of the first two healings took place in Jewish sacrificial ritual cleansing places. So I thought that was interesting. So, and I'm glad you said that because that reminded me of that. I thought I had it in a slide somewhere to remind me, but I didn't. So, any questions? I'll be here for a while.
I wanted to mention the New King James is based on the majority text. The new text is a bit more selective, and that's the one that excludes verse 4. So the majority text is obviously, they took the bulk of all the New Testament books that they had, and that's how they came up with the majority text.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they just kind of did a consensus of all the, okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought long and hard about that, and I looked in the commentaries, but I thought it was to maybe reinforce the divinity of Jesus. So anyway, you need to come up here and pray. I need to get away.